Okay, everybody, we're going to start the meeting.
I agree, we haven't done it.
Welcome to the March 5th Select Board Agenda. I'm John Martin, Francine Tishman, Jim Labrie, Matt Rowland, and Rini Groden. If you can, first of all, we're being recorded and it's streaming live. And if we can do the Pledge of Allegiance, I'd appreciate you standing.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, before we get started, Cindy Palmer has some cards that I think she's going to hand out. You're not going to hand them out? Okay, this is Open Space Committee. It's about the 3 events that are coming up. Spoke briefly about it last week. There's some cards to save the dates. Wednesday, April 10th, Tuesday, April 30th, 5:30 at the First Congregational Church. Then Saturday, May 11th, there's going to be a hike starting at Wolf Hill at 1 o'clock. Then Glendale, 111 Glendale following that. And there's a picnic at Conant Park. I think that's going to be a lot of fun. So put those dates down. I hope to see a lot of you there. Okay, no appointments, no hearings, reports. Rini, would you like to start off?
Sure, I don't really have that much to report because tomorrow is CPC and tomorrow is COA. I'll let you report on open space. And COMCOM, we met last night. Actually, just regular business for the most part, doing some of the requirements of the grant. But 2 questions came up. One of them is, when is construction starting on Glendale? And the other question is, are we moving along with the open space and recreation plan? Have you heard anything about the grant and all that? I'm looking at you, Ed, but you have to be recognized.
I'm going to answer one and leave the other one for my report.
Okay.
But right now, pre-construction is scheduled to start on Glendale Road around March 15th, but they think that's going to get pushed back just because of the fact of there's still snow on the ground at this point. But the pre-construction would be like the distribution of signs and whatever. So they're still looking at actual construction, depending on the weather, beginning of April.
And abutters and residents will be notified by whom? By the Gillher, the town?
It's one of the things that we intend to put on our website.
Okay.
But both for the notification of starting and also for traffic plans. We did have a meeting on, shall we to say, traffic control or detours here in the town hall last week, of which, Randall Kemp, our highway superintendent, Ian Illingsworth, our police chief, John Workman, our fire chief, and myself attended with someone from Gillher. So we just went through those aspects, and he wanted to hear from the chiefs and from Randall what they thought would be tolerable. So.
Great, thanks.
You're welcome.
My turn?
Yes, sir.
I don't have any updates from PQB or for Capital Committee, but I do have some updates with regard to our Board of Health meeting that was done on February 26th last week. We discussed a number of things, but the things that were pointed out that they wanted me to bring to the attention of this board and perhaps discuss or add to an agenda at a later point in time. I happen to think the first one's a great idea. It sounds like for trucking out of the transfer station, we don't have a contract. We kind of go year to year or pickup to pickup, and it's not a set fee or a rate, and it apparently hasn't been, according to them, it hasn't been bid out in a long time. And it sounds like there potentially might be an opportunity for savings if we put something out to bid with multiple different trucking companies for like a 3 or a 5 year service and pickup. And then I'll just say personally, and this didn't come up at the meeting, but this has come up in my reading and also in the news. There's definitely a recycling crisis that's hitting America just in general, mostly because China is not accepting our recycling anymore. So I personally think that this is probably a good idea because this is not only going to be for trash but it will also be for recycling. And if you're following the news, the recycling probably has a chance of upticking, just given that we have nowhere to put it at this point. So I think we should probably discuss that or work with Board of Health and Randall and figuring something out where we're putting that out to bid and at least just verifying the rates that we're getting currently, that we're doing the best we can there. The other thing that came up is, which I think is happening all of the time, and I feel like we hear this a lot at these meetings or just around. It sounds like the interaction just between Board of Health and Highway Department just could be better. Like the communication is probably a better word for it. I think Board of Health just wishes that they would get more interaction with the Highway Department and what they're doing with their personnel and hiring and grants coming in and where the money's being utilized and just better communication overall. And so they asked me to kind of bring that up. And then lastly, Nicole is getting certified in soil analysis, and that's under a grant. So.
Speaking of recycling, you hear a lot more about elimination of plastic bags. Mm-hmm. And that's going on all over. And that's a Board of Health issue, right? So,
yep. So that came up, and they're working on trying to eliminate plastic bags across the town by a certain date. I did bring up that there was a news article, and I forwarded it on to Ben Hogan. Big Y's doing this, which is probably the biggest producer of plastic bags. They're doing it on their own. Okay. And there was a news article that I sent to him I could bring up here, but I'm pretty sure by 2020 there'll be no more plastic bags at Big Y. And they're doing that on their own, not part of a Board of Health initiative. But it sounds like the Board of Health is on this too for the rest of the town that produces plastic bags.
So let me ask you a question. Oh.
No, I was just going to say Northampton's been doing it for well over a year now.
Mm-hmm.
Would it help if this board made a recommendation to the Board of Health that we would support that elimination of all?
I think so. Yeah.
I think that'd be a great idea. I mean, it took a while to get used to bringing your own bags to the supermarket, but once you do it, you do it. You know?
Yeah, you do it.
Yeah.
I mean, do we want to vote on something like that now, and we can pass that on?
Happy to hear a motion on that as a recommendation to the Board of Health.
Do we want to put a timeline on it, or do we want to just do it as a loose recommendation?
Yeah.
They are working on it. They are.
This is just for support.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say.
So if we have a recommendation to let the Board of Health know we support the elimination of plastic bags in the town of Southampton, I think that would be a good way to go.
I mean, so moved, and I would just add as soon as possible. I mean.
Okay, that's fair. Second?
I'll second it with discussion.
Okay. Yeah.
Now, we're talking about shopping bags at Big Y, but we're not talking about like Ziploc bags and trash bag liners?
No, we're talking about shopping bags at Big Y, the local convenience stores, any of those places.
People are going to ask me, like, our trash liners for our trash bag, is it going to be eliminated?
No.
Okay.
No. And that's something the Board of Health would have to take up.
Yeah. That's something the Board of Health would have to take up. And then I also think that they're working on separately, but kind of at the same time, and I actually think that this is coming about sooner than perhaps the plastic bags, is elimination of styrofoam disposable containers. So, you know, those styrofoam containers that you get your leftovers in at a restaurant, and even the styrofoam cups that you get at Dunkin' Donuts for your coffee, they would migrate over to a paper type.
Do you want to
should add that? We should probably amend that to include plastic bags and styrofoam disposable containers.
And I would just make a broader statement about recycling in general.
Okay.
Just the fact that people need to take more care about how they dispose of and what they dispose and what they put in recycling, because I use the transfer station, and the amount of recyclable materials that are in the trash or in, you know, the cans and the ones that can go back for refund, people could make, I'm not going to say a better effort. I don't want to judge what somebody does and doesn't do, but I think everybody could do a better job of recycling.
I mean, I'm a big advocate of taking the cans for 5 cents and putting it in for the scholarship fund, because one of my sons got it a long time ago. But when I dump the others in the big container, if somebody wanted to dive in there, they're all over the place.
Right.
So a lot of people aren't doing it.
Right.
Not that we're diving. So can I make a suggestion, Jim? Could you take back your second, and
Sure.
you could take back your first?
Sure.
Okay, so if we could have a motion that will support the Board of Health in coming up with guidelines to eliminate plastic shopping bags
And
and
styrofoam
styrofoam containers, and also support recycling in general.
Yep.
Do we have a motion on that?
As, you know, with the, as soon as possible, you
Right.
know, within reason, so moved.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll resecond it.
Okay, any more discussion on that? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Can I ask another question about the Board of Health? Has there been any further discussion about regionalization of the Board of Health, like with Westhampton and some of the neighboring towns?
That hasn't come up at any recent meeting, or even, they typically hold meetings when we're in session here, and I've reviewed the minutes, and I haven't seen an indication of that.
And just getting back to your, if we don't have a contract bidding out for the trucking company and for tipping fees and all that, you're right, we should have something. Is that something you can follow up with, Randall?
Yeah, it already started. We had an existing contract for 3 years, which is expired, so he's putting together the paperwork for that now.
Okay.
Is he going to
great.
put it out to bid?
Yeah, we will.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Francine?
Okay. Last night, the Hampshire Regional School Committee met, and the good news is John was elected to the negotiating team for the teacher contract negotiations that will be taking place soon, if not immediately. At that meeting, the school committee approved a level-funded budget. That means the amount of money that they received last year, 2019 budget. The unfortunate thing is that their revenue went down for 2020, so in order to support that level funding, our share will include an additional $129,000. All of this was just passed by the school committee. It has to be voted on in each of the 5 towns. So we'll see how that goes at their town meeting. So we'll get-
did they explain the reason for the revenue shortfall?
I'm trying to remember.
Some of it was school choice in. That fell. And they also said they supplemented from some of their funds,
That they can't do.
E&D funds and school choice in funds.
Yeah, can you just, what was the original amount the budget was for? What did they go down after the meetings?
Well,
Well,
That might be
the budget from last year,
the first
original
proposed
2020.
budget.
the first one was,
No, our increase now is 129,000. What
Right.
was it prior to the
Oh, it
negotiation?
was-
400 something.
it was 205,000.
500.
Okay, 213.
So we didn't save quite $100,000.
4.1 something
I thought you were
percent.
talking about the
Right.
food.
Yeah, it was
Gotcha. I was just
4.1%.
Okay,
The negotiations had some
right.
positive side.
It did. And I think they're on the alert. I think the way it was worded is that when it goes to town meeting, the budget cannot exceed the total amount that they approved. But if towns want to make recommendations for reductions, that's a possibility as well.
And I'm just going to add our 6 members of the Southampton 6 Southampton members to the Hampshire Regional School Committee. We had a meeting with them last week. It was a great meeting. And because of those folks last night, this is why we're able to do that, because they were basically a block vote. Plus, we got help from Goshen and a couple other towns. But they were, especially Tammy and Margaret, were very persuasive last night at the meeting. So thanks to everybody that helped out.
Thank you for also stepping up to be on the committee.
You're welcome.
They also voted to accept school choice, which is something they have to do every year, to just go on record as accepting students from other districts in, so they did do that. They passed a health policy requiring medical documentation for return to school for contagious and/or extended illnesses. Some will go to the main office, depending upon the illness. Some others will have to go by the school nurse before students come in back to school. The bad news is, because of early closings, because of the weather, or delayed openings because of the weather, they have to make up somehow between now and the rest of the year 24 hours. So I don't know if they're going to do it minutes per day. They're still trying to work it out. But because of all the transportation scheduling issues, I don't think it's going to be an easy task to do, chunks of time. So they're going to have to take minutes here and minutes there. So that's it. Thank you.
Jim?
Okay, I stopped by the assessors. They met at 4:30 today. I couldn't make the meeting, but I asked them if there was anything important I need to share. And they said there was nothing that they saw that was necessary for me to bring over here. Tomorrow night, again, we have CPC and the planning board tomorrow night, and there's really not a lot on the agenda for the planning board. A couple of A&Rs, and maybe going to create a application for the marijuana bylaw to help applicants. But I'll report on that next meeting.
Okay. Now, Hampshire Regional, we talked about in open space, we haven't had a meeting since last week, so I don't think there's anything else to add to that.
Maybe
So-
just mention again that there is the water department is having that guest come next Tuesday night, the 12th.
12th, yep.
Help me remember what his name was. Remember, he's a professor. He talks about the geology and the water.
Bob Newton.
Bob Newton, right.
It's in
That'll-
here.
6 o'clock next Tuesday. It's a presentation.
Yeah, should be interesting.
Yeah.
Thanks, Rini. Okay, town administrator report.
And before I get into my regular report, just to follow up on a couple of items, just to let you know that also the state legislature is looking at a statewide, a bill for statewide ban of plastic bags, which would be nice if they would do that. And then also to follow up on recycling, Randall was at a recycling meeting today, and yeah, the news in the recycling forefront is not good. It's probably going to end up costing us more money. At one time, we actually got paid for our recycling. Then it became neutral. We didn't get anything, receive any money for the tonnage on it, but it was still cheaper than actually paying $79 or $85 a ton to have it hauled out. Chances are we're going to have to start actually paying to have recycling put into the stream, and there is a potential that it may cost actually more to get rid of a ton of recycling than it does a ton of trash.
It's not good.
So there's
it's
some
not good at
issues
all.
on the forefront. That being said, in my regular report, just to follow up, 111 Glendale Road, we have received the original recorded documents for our acquisition of 111 Glendale Road from Attorney Evans for what he recorded at the Hampshire Record of Deeds. The Highway Department currently has 3 pieces of equipment which are out of service and need of repair. There are 2 trucks and 1 loader which are out currently. They are working diligently to get them back online, but as our Highway Department equipment gets older, it is becoming increasingly costly to repair, and those repairs are occurring more frequently.
Yeah, I asked a question on that, Ed, at the school committee last night. They saved $16,000 by, instead of buying the van outright that they're going to use for transportation, they're leasing a capital lease over 3 years. So that saved $16,000 each. It pushed it each year, $16,000. Is there a way we can look at a capital lease for some of this equipment?
You can. Traditionally, municipalities, and just by looking at the age of our equipment, you not only drive it into the ground past its useful life, so generally, leasing is the least favorable of the options. You may not pay for it outright, but you might borrow against it. But because of the fact that most municipalities will use them past their useful life and past any trade value, you're better off either buying them straight out or borrowing on them.
And we were talking about maybe doing a debt exclusion for a bunch of equipment at one time. Is that still active, or are you looking into that?
Depending on how it falls, I'm if we just did one piece of equipment, I might look favorably upon just a regular borrowing rather than the debt exclusion. And if it falls to the point that we have to do multiples, then yeah, we might look into the advantage of doing a debt exclusion on that. But there is definitely equipment that probably should be replaced this year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's not cheap, so.
Yeah.
Now, these trucks, are those some plow trucks?
Yes, they are all used in the winter fleet for plowing.
That's a problem.
All 3 of these. And some of it, there's one that probably won't go back on the road, but traditionally, probably over the last month or so, they've had breakdowns, and it's kind of been, okay, they'll get get one repaired and back on the road, another one might go down and what have you. But right now, there are 3 pieces of equipment out.
How many do we have left?
It's not, it's all 3 dump trucks. Are all 3 of them dump trucks, or is one a
Two,
loader?
two dumps and 1 loader.
Yeah, I mean, I took a tour there once, and one of their dump trucks is
Sad?
in unbelievably bad shape. I mean,
Yeah.
it's the oldest one.
Right.
How many do we have left? I mean, are we
It's in
gonna be
bad
in
shape.
trouble if it snows?
Well, if we had a major snowstorm, we'd probably be in trouble, but hopefully 2 of the 3 pieces of equipment will be back in service again by Thursday. So they're having someone to come in and look at the
Right.
loader tomorrow, and they were working on one of the dump trucks today, so.
I guess one of the issues is we're adding more streets, more roads, so.
Right.
And the equipment's getting older, so maybe during the spring, summer, you and Randall can look at what's needed and maybe decide how we're gonna pay for it, you know.
Yeah, like I say, we'll be doing that through this budgetary cycle, so,
Right.
yeah.
So for next winter, we'll be back on.
I mean,
track.
I know that we really should replace one of the dump trucks
Dump
this
trucks,
year.
I
Then
agree
it's a
with that.
question of, okay, do we really look at replacing 2 pieces of equipment? And we may be there, so.
Thanks.
Just to make you aware, the city of Westfield has reached out to us to see if we would be willing to join in on a feasibility study for the regionalization of dispatch services, along with several other towns. The feasibility study would not commit the town to joining, but would identify the important information and the pros and cons of having a regionalized dispatch service. Would the board be interested in pursuing the application for a grant along with the city of Westfield and the town of Southwick for a feasibility study for this purpose and writing a letter of interest for this project?
Yes.
I mean, there's been a lot of pros and cons on both sides, and everybody else needs to give their opinion. But if it's not committing us and it's a grant, I don't see a downside to it. What do the rest of you think?
I agree.
I agree.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, I'm for it. I mean,
Okay.
hopefully the feasibility study will bring up the pluses and the minuses,
Right.
and based on that information, we can make our decision.
Yeah, and,
Right.
and once and for all, we can settle it with a study. So, do we need a motion for that, Ed?
No, if you just tell me that, I will follow up on that. I'll draft a letter, and if
Okay.
you would sign it to,
Great.
for the city of Westfield. And I had a conversation with Chief Illingsworth today. I mean, he is definitely not a fan of
Right.
regionalization, but we talked through it, and since we're not committing, my personal feeling is we might as well take a look at it, find out what the pros or cons are. You know, we might find it makes all the sense in the world and we get better service. We could find out that it's not going to work as well and actually be more costly. So we might as well go through the exercise if
Yeah, I think the
if
key
we are
is,
able to get a grant to do it.
yeah, I think the key is we'll have an answer.
Exactly.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Thank you. East Street Bridge update. VHB has the geotechnical engineers on site today with their drilling rig at the East Street Bridge to do the soil borings, which are required for the bridge design. One of the soil boring sites had to be moved up onto the road as it was not accessible on private property through the a butter's yard. There was just not a direct path to it. So then there was a second boring location on a different parcel, which was on private property, and that property owner actually did give permission for the geotechnical engineers to take the rig across their property to get to the boring site. So they were out there today, and I'm not sure if they'll be back there tomorrow or hopefully they finished all their work, but that first step will now be accomplished. Old business, the town hall generator. The electricians have wired the new emergency generator to the building. They did that over 2 days last week, and the plumber has finished the hookup to the natural gas, which was done yesterday. The last step in the process is that we are awaiting a date from Cummins, who is the emergency generator manufacturer, to schedule the on-site startup and commissioning of the emergency generator. So as soon as I get word on that, I'll let you know.
Just in time for the spring season, right?
Exactly. just in time for tornado season. Gun Road Extension traffic control request. Once the weather warms up, probably April, the radar sign will be placed on Gun Road Extension, again to record the number of trips and the vehicle speeds with school in session this time. And this will complete the gathering of information to be able to make recommendations back to the board for any traffic control measures which may be pertinent. Traffic speed study on Route 10. I've talked to Mass DOT Highway Division twice now. They have done the preliminary work for the speed study, but they are waiting warmer weather to get out there and actually complete the study and then get us the results of that. Open Space and Recreation Plan. We were just notified today by PVPC that we were awarded the DLTA grant in the amount of $10,500 for an update for our Open Space and Recreation Plan.
Awesome.
Yes.
The total amount came to what, 14 or 16,000?
It's one of the questions that I wrote back to him because the original amount was 14,000, of which 13,300 was intended to come from the grant, and $700 was our, and in-kind services was our 5% match. So I have written back and asked, okay, does that now mean that we're going to need to appropriate money, or do they feel that we can still do the update to the plan for the funding that we've been allocated? So I will let you know as soon as I find that out.
And that will be done by somebody at PVPC?
Yes. Exactly.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. The DOER Green Communities Grant, Advanced Energy has completed the lighting study at Norris School, and the school can be retrofit with LED lights at a net cost to the town after the incentive rebates of $53,000. They are looking at the numbers for an LED replacement to Town Hall, as well as the insulation in the attic, and they'll get back to me with that figure. And actually, the $53,000 was a lot less than I had anticipated for the lighting retrofit at Norris School, and this is due to the new incentives which came into place after January 1st. So I asked them to take a look at the cost of replacing and the energy savings of replacing the highest priority exterior doors at Norris Elementary that they had
Great.
provided us to.
Yeah, that's great.
And that's due to that retrofitting cost coming back so reasonable. So as soon as I've got that, I'll let both you and the school know.
I got to say, with the building where I work in, they just did a retrofit on LED, and it makes such a difference.
Unbelievable.
Huge difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't get the over time, you get the 20%
Degrading
reduction
of
in
the light.
fluorescence.
I think it'll help.
LEDs are much higher, they retain the light
Yeah.
value.
Coleman Road, sale of the house and property that was in tax title. That house and property on Coleman Road actually did sell, and the town was paid the back taxes, the penalty, and interest on that. So that's
Great.
an update on that piece. The charter building on Former Road, I am still working with town council on this negotiation, and I'll report updates back to the board during executive sessions. The dog complaint, had interesting conversations with town council for the dogs on White Loaf. And there are actually two avenues to follow. One is the standard one, is to proceed to file a complaint in the court and go through that process. But the attorney I talked to at KP Law actually had another interesting avenue that might actually maybe have better luck or have actually more of an incentive for the owners of the animals to keep them under control. And the other option is if and when they're loose again and a call comes into the police, and I can also let the property owner know this, contact the animal control officer and let them know that if they do go out there and find these dogs loose and off their property, that they are to seize the dogs and not return them to the owner. And the only probably disadvantage or flaw, and that is obviously the dogs would have to be loose off their property, and obviously they'd have, the animal control officer would have to get there and find them. But it may be a more viable way to get this situation in control.
The question is, and not return them to the owner. What happens to the dogs?
I have to be careful how I say this because the attorney said it to me and I didn't really care for the way he said it. So basically, the Board of Selectmen would have the power to say, okay, to the animal control officer, they don't go back to the current owners, find a good home, adopt them out.
Okay, adopt them out. I like that answer.
Well, he used a word that I associate with something else, but didn't really mean that. But yeah, no, I mean, as long as, I mean, I've heard both sides of it, both from the neighbor that feels threatened by them, but I also remember that when Chief Goyette had gone out there for one call, he had said that the dogs were actually very friendly. So,
Yeah. Have we gotten any other complaints since the
I have
complainant
not.
showed up?
But if I kind of like the second option, and if the board does too, I will let the. Like I say, I'll notify the police. I will also notify the animal control officer, but I will also notify the abutters that, okay, if this occurs, not only call the police, but here's the animal control number too. The police will call them, but they can also.
Did you say you'll notify the owners also?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
What
can
do
I
you-
ask
what
a
do you
question
folks
about that? Because we've had the neighbor over here at least twice saying that logging all these police calls, and it just doesn't, I just felt like if we didn't do something or if we didn't get an update, like the same thing's going to happen again. This neighbor's going to come back again and say that they're barking and,
Yeah, no, we're not
all
doing anything
hours and that sort of thing. But we also heard that the dogs weren't even registered. Like, so has anybody been given proper notice? Has the person with the dog gotten a, letter saying,
Should
these are
put
the
up a fence
consequences?
or-
It just feels like, it's just nothing's happened.
That was part of the, I can't remember if it was the first or the second instance that ended up actually going to court when the individuals didn't show up for court. But that was part of that.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Did
they-
we determine that they are registered?
they are not.
They are not
At least
registered.
the last time I checked, which was probably now 3 to 4 weeks ago, they still were not.
So they're still ignoring it if that's still the case now, so we have to do something. So what would you like to do? You want a motion on this? Which one?
Sure.
Okay. So does anybody have a,
I have a preference for number 2, as long as that the caveat is that they go to a better home.
do you want to make that into a motion?
Sure. I'll move to, the next time this becomes a problem and it's reported to the appropriate authorities, police and/or animal control, that the animals are seized under their possession and not returned to the owner,
And then placed in
a adoption facility for appropriate adoption.
you have a second to that?
I'll second that, but I think there should be a time limit. I mean, if they keep calling the animal control and they can't catch them, maybe after a month or two, we go to the next step, I guess. I don't know.
Well, I think that's where the abutter would have to come back to us and say, I've called 3 or 4 times. Every time they get here, the dogs are in the house.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
I don't
that
know how
makes
long we
sense.
should drag it on.
I'm just a little uncomfortable about it. I don't really feel like I have enough information. I just wanted sort of an update on it, but I just, we heard that these dogs are very, very friendly. They're not being contained within their own property. It's just, something just seems missing to me, like to say, well, I mean, they didn't show up in court, they're not responding to letters, they're not registering their dog. Like, what are the consequences in town for people not registering their dog?
This.
They
Not
get
registered.
they get certified letters saying you better pay.
Yeah, so
they-
this is the consequence. I
they
mean, you're
they
not,
receive-
they're
receive a
basically
fine.
non-compliant with anything. I mean, this
Okay.
is what happens when you don't.
And so this
Well,
is,
maybe we should go both directions.
so a situation like this always comes in front of a
Tandem.
select board when someone doesn't register their dog, or,
I mean,
I'm not really
98 to 99% of the time is someone has dogs that are loose or whatever that aren't licensed. Most of the time, the first time they get fined, they pay the fine and it doesn't happen again. This is an unusual instance.
And most times we don't hear it. This is
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
that just
Okay.
continued
I'm
on.
sure it's just escalated to this point.
Yeah. Any more discussion before we vote? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
I'm going to abstain.
Okay, oppose, and one abstention?
Yeah.
Okay, so 401.
All right, and then Board of Selectmen meetings, next one's March 19th, and the April meetings are to be determined.
Okay, you missed M. Do you want to go over that at all?
I'm sorry. The next special project I will be working on is finding a qualified consultant to perform the feasibility envelope study for the evaluation of the police station, which is the old town hall.
Any questions for Ed?
Can I ask you one other question about outstanding item is the front doors to the building here?
Yeah.
Any update on that?
No.
But we did just talk about that recently. You talking about the main front doors?
Yeah, wasn't Christina,
Yeah,
Christina going to come by with her sister?
Yeah, she'd told me probably about a month ago that she'd been busy, but she was about to free up, and as soon as she did have some free time, she'd come back and work out a detailed plan on that.
Can we add this to the pending items,
Sure.
please?
Anything else for Ed? Okay, Cindy Palmer wants to talk about the almoners. Hi, Cindy.
Cindy Palmer, 71 Glendale Road. And I'm here as the chair of the almoners. First of all, this is basically an information that I'm sharing with the select board, and I'm only looking for one action, and that's, as I discuss this, I'll tell you what that action is. I want to remind you what a wonderful town Southampton is, of kind and benevolent people, and that goes way back, greater than 100 years. I don't know how much you know, but I'm going to assume some of it is not known by anybody. In 1901, $17,000, which was a tremendous amount of money in 1901, was bequeathed to our town by a very generous individual named Lydia Ann Searle. And she was noted to be a person that nobody believed she had any money. She always wore the same dress, and she always wore the same hat, and no one could believe she had $17,000. And her will said this was to be for the benefit of the, quote, worthy poor. In 1878, a gentleman named Whiting Street, who was known to be a man of great wealth, he had $500,000 at his death. That's a lot of money. In 1878, he bequeathed $2,000 for the relief and comfort of the worthy poor who shall not be in the almshouse nor be city or town paupers, unquote. And thirdly, a woman named Harriet Chapman, who was also a former almoner, she passed away in 1896 and bequeathed $1,000 for the worthy poor. I have discovered that nobody knows what an almoner is unless you happen to be in Southampton and have been an almoner or possibly had a presentation like this. But of people that I've mentioned I'm an almoner, they don't know what it means. So it just derives from the concept of alms being something that's given. It's generally something given by a religious person, or it could be given by a social worker. So we have almoners in our town. There's 4 of us. We're elected on staggered 4-year terms. Currently, I'm happy to say Chris Canton is here. She's been an almoner for a few years. And the other 2 are Carl Kuhner and also Lise Lemeland, who's a brand new almoner. I don't think any of them are here tonight besides Chris, and thank you, Chris, for coming. Right now, we have 2 accounts. It's all held by our accountant, and one account is non-expendable trust funds, and it's those 3 numbers that I just gave you, although somehow they've grown a little bit, and I'm not entirely sure why, because the interest from those accounts is supposed to go into the expendable accounts. The expendable accounts are the ones that we can spend. We cannot touch the non-expendable trust funds. Our current balance is somewhere in the vicinity of $7,500. That's not a lot of money. Might have been a lot of money 100 years ago, but $7,500 does not go very far. Other things that have changed over the years, we have a lot more social programs that can be of assistance to individuals at this point in time. Nonetheless, we do know that there's need in our community. Our current almoners have spent some time utilizing all this historical information, doing our best to kind of go back to whatever was known by previous townspeople or almoners, and anyone who is listening perhaps tonight or maybe even in this room who has something to tell us to help us more understand what almoners should be doing should feel free to come to me or one of the almoners, not at this time, but perhaps after the meeting or a different time. So our guidelines are as follows. We have elected a chairperson and a vice chairperson who will serve in the absence of the chairperson. And those names are have been already, I believe, provided to the town clerk, town administrator. We meet only as needed. We do not post our meetings, nor are we subject to the open meeting laws. Meeting locations vary, discussions are confidential, and the fact of the confidentiality is considered when determining the meeting site. Almoners report to no town official, either elected nor employed. We do not report to the select board, to the town administrator, nor to town meeting. This is a courtesy just to talk with you tonight. Almoners are entrusted with the fiscal management of the non-expendable principal, which the almoner of the almoner's accounts and the expendable almoner's accounts. We are the ones that have to say what can be expended. Anyone who is not a family member may, even anonymously, bring to any almoner's attention a circumstance for consideration as someone who might fall into the category of, quote, worthy poor, and thus seek almoner's funds. The town clerk or any other person suggesting a circumstance for almoner's considerations will direct the inquiry to the almoner chairperson. And any email that might come through, we're asking only for the most basic of information like name and contact information, not details, because emails are obviously subject to, confidentiality, sometimes compromised in emails. So if anyone knows of anything and they choose to send an email, please keep it very brief. We will follow up on an in-person basis. We have determined that really support is only supposed to be a once-only circumstance, not an ongoing circumstance. Determination of the worthy poor, we've concluded this is what we've come up with, has to be a town resident, has to be an emergency situation which, if not addressed, could result in a worsening hardship. Examples might be, but are not limited to, a medical or impairment need, adequate shelter, such as a heating or electrical issue, adequate clothing, adequate food, child or elder protection. It could be a one-time assistance bridge for the person to get to other assistance that might take longer. An application might be in process. And also, is there no other timely source of assistance? Is really, we need to help somebody out right away, help them out, even though more help might be in the future, and there is no other option for them. And the question is this a first-time request? So those are some of the things we're going to consider when a need is put before us. One or more of the almoners will contact the individual or the family to help with the evaluation process. Final decisions are made by the entire almoner group. Max expenditure generally does not exceed $1,000, which isn't a lot of money. Could be a lot less, too. This amount can be revised based on circumstance, funding balance, and almoner discretion. Payment is made based only on an invoice. We do not expend any kind of cash, so invoice has to be presented to be reimbursed. We will periodically be requesting balances of the accounts from our town accountant. So that's the general information. Of course, questions are welcome or discussion, but the one thing I do need from the select board tonight, we all agreed on this, the almoners, is that we need to have one select board member identified as an individual who could help us in the case of a tie, because we're an even number 4, and that's apparently come up in the past. So I don't know if among you there's an individual that would like to nominate themselves or nominate somebody on the board. That it doesn't mean you have to attend meetings or anything. It's only going to be if there's a circumstance of a tie. So at this point, that's what I had to say. Do you have questions of any kind that I can help with?
I'm sorry, if you have a meeting and you have a tie, then you'd call the select board person, and then you have another meeting with that person?
That would be what would have to happen, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I do have a question. The non-expendable funds, how, you said, how much is that?
Well, right, I have a balance from last
7,500.
August, and it's just under $7,400.
That's expendable or non-expendable?
None.
I'm sorry, I apologize,
Yeah,
Francine,
that's it.
sorry. Non-expendable funds is the total of
Right.
the three
The
funds.
17,000?
17
going
plus 2 plus 1,000, although the 2,000 got to be 2,700 along the line, so it's
back
about,
all those
it's about
years?
20,000. Those are the original,
Yeah, I know, going back all these, so I guess my question is,
Nobody's
how
given.
is it invested? I mean, how is it being held? Not invested for speculation, but CDs, something.
well, that's a question to the
Growing.
town accountant, and he or she, whomever it's been over the years, is some modest interest earned, and the interest goes into the expendable
Expendable
trust.
account.
Yeah,
Yes.
I can understand.
But
if
how is it expended?
Yeah.
I only know what she told me, and that she's got it invested. And I think there's other funds in our towns. I know the library has some funds that were donations that are very modest, but, you know, again, one wonders if we could talk with our town accountant and see if they could grow more quickly or something, safely.
That's what I mean, safely, but
Yeah.
like a certificate of deposit or something.
Sure.
I mean, it's not great, but it's better
Yeah.
than just letting it sit.
Cash.
Well, yeah, and again, the interest, I don't actually know how these grew over the years based on what the original amounts were, but that's a good question, thank you.
Can I ask a question? Have you spoken to the senior center or the elementary school? Are they aware of this?
The answer is, from what I understand, Chris can maybe help me on this,
Senior center, we get recommendations.
Yeah.
from them. We haven't.
They're aware of the fund? And does the elementary school know, like the nurse or the principal?
Actually, I think, I know of one individual, I believe it's their secretary, Mrs. Carmichael, who's been immensely
Okay.
able to let people know of issues. But there was a time, Chris can help with this, when I understand food baskets were being given around the holidays, but there wasn't a clear control over how that was going out. So we aren't leaning in the direction of just, 12 food baskets or something.
Right.
But we are accepting, certainly if the director or somebody at the senior center knew of a particular circumstance. And again, that's why I'm standing before everybody and knowing this is
Yeah.
being broadcast so that they can come to our attention. There was a time, I think we did a little fundraising and advertising for fundraising.
We had a nice article in the paper several years ago, and after that, we did get some donations.
Oh, that's nice.
Chris, I'm going to have to, if you want to talk
Yeah.
about it, if you
Well,
could-
I'll
if you
repeat
could
what
come
she
up-
just said.
Okay, great.
There was something in the Gazette a few years back, and some donations came as a result of that. And we are talking about ways to do that, to increase the funds and make more available, but we're sort of taking it in small steps right now.
And is it available for people that have medical and/or funeral expenses?
Well,
That are not-
again, it's the criteria that I just read, which includes emergency, is there any other assistance? Is this something that is could result in a worsening hardship?
Okay, thanks.
So basically, the almoners decide.
100%, the almoners decide, 100%. And also, I've been told, there's absolutely no records that are kept. We don't have minutes, we don't have, way back at the turn of the last century before, there was something published in some of the really old records that had actually a list of who were the recipients, $2.57 went to
Really?
so-and-so, and et cetera. But we, in the modern era, have not kept any records, and we are not keeping records.
Okay.
Do you find the need far exceeds what you have available to give
Well,
out?
that's a hard one, Jim, because that would be my subjective opinion only, because we've had one circumstance come before us, and that person didn't reach the evaluation that I just read. So we got a little stricter with how we're looking at things, a little more objective about it. I know there's great need in our world. I know there's people that have a lot of need. So that's my subjective opinion. But and I know Southampton has need too. There are families that need things.
So is there anybody interested in volunteering?
I'll nominate Francine.
I knew he was going to do that.
I'll second that nomination.
So discussion, Francine? Are you okay with that? Doesn't sound like you have to
I
need
mean,
much.
yeah. I'll be happy to do it. We're neighbors, and
We're all neighbors in Southampton. I
Yes.
will say, Francine, it may never, ever come up. It's only in the case of a tie.
no, it's not about the time. It's about, it's a,
Yeah, heaven knows you don't do
it's a
anything
very
else.
worthwhile thing. It is.
It's worthwhile and it's
But I
unique.
never went into social work for a reason. I go the other,
So all in,
soft touch. But yes, I'll be I'll be happy to do it.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, Francine. Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you. Do you want
Thank you,
this
Chris.
For the minutes?
Okay, fiscal year 19 budget and expenditure review. Everybody took a look at that? It goes
Yes.
through February 28th, which is 8 months, which is 67% of the year. So,
7, thank you for saying that.
so when you go down, I went down, the only real things I've found that were a little out of whack, I believe, were in for fire, for the expenditures.
Okay.
So let me go down to that. Go ahead, Francine.
Okay, yeah, I looked more at the revenue side of things because we have to have, anyway. What I noticed is that what's recorded here is substantially less than 2/3 of what we should have because we're 2/3 of the way through the budget year.
Yep.
And so I went to talk to the treasurer about it to make sure that, there was money in the bank. According to the treasurer, this is the postings here are as of the end of December, so that the revenue collected from the February 1st tax and the excise taxes that are coming in now have not been recorded. So it looks like we're, have a that we're down about 7.5 million. Prorate that over 8 of the 12 months. But in actuality, she's saying to me she's comfortable that our collections are what they should be at this point in time. So
And-
that's all I can go by, but
And I was going out when you were
Yeah.
coming in, and what also I talked to her about is, this was Jen, coming to our next meeting, inviting her and Vicky to give an update on this, and by that time, I asked her if she could update this information so it would be current, because she did say it was through December.
right.
So,
Yeah.
if everybody's okay with that, we can invite them both here.
Sounds good.
That seems a little concerning.
Yeah,
Did I
most all the
cut you off,
revenues are
Francine?
negative.
Okay.
I mean, no, it was just honestly, it was my concern, do we have the money in the bank to pay our bills? Because if
Right.
you look at the expense report, it's substantially higher than what we're showing as revenue here. So I'll feel more comfortable when we hear it. I guess the question is, and this has been, when I was on finance, it was the same thing, the delay in getting the money posted into the system so that we have a current picture.
Yeah. Jen?
I don't understand the
Jen was
process.
saying she was behind because she has somebody that she hasn't replaced, she only has a temp. And to train a temp to do this type of work takes longer than, actually the work is worth. And she has I guess, a good candidate to fill the position on a permanent basis. So she's kind of
Okay.
playing catch up. And she said she had to do the payroll, and I said, yes, payroll's more important than this right
Right.
now. I want to pay the folks. So I think we're both on the same
Okay.
track. So we'll see them next meeting, and hopefully it'll all be updated. So going down to the expenses, again, I think in general, a lot of them are way below the 67%. I'm trying to go back to the fire again.
Yeah, the fire and police are.
Fire was a little up. EMS building expenses was 143%. And I'm not sure why on that, Ed, so maybe we
That
can,
would be the replacement of the boiler over there.
okay. That was,
Are we going to be able to recoup some vocational tuition? It's budgeted for 860,000, we're less than 30% on expenses.
That would be great.
That may be
Is that up to
planned.
date? Do you know?
It's probably just how the invoices come in from Smith Vocational.
would you mind just checking on it so we'll know?
I was hoping you would say the other.
No, I can remember from actually my previous position in Beckett is they always seemed to be behind because the vocational schools would send the invoice to the regional school district for authorization, and then it would come here. But I will double check on that.
Okay. And Hampshire Regional Operating is a little over, they're at 75. But all in all, most of them are below. Communication, wages and expenses wages are a little over. No, I'm sorry. Fire chief's salary is a little over, but again, not enough to worry about. So, bless you. So I think everybody is doing great again this year, and we got 8 months, and we're not, hemorrhaging money like we have in past years, so that's a good sign. And if we can get the revenue on track, I think we're all set. So next week, we'll have the treasurer and the accountant, and we can discuss it in more detail.
Yeah. One of the things I did notice in several building categories for different departments, their expenses are up, and that's because, the buildings are old and the systems are old and starting to show
Yeah.
In unanticipated expenses.
Yeah, one of them was in Randall's area, but he got back to us a week or two ago and explained that.
No, it's no one's fault. I'm just saying,
Yeah.
it's the condition of the facilities that we have.
And I think if everybody stays on budget or below, we'll have a little money at the end of the year that we can roll into these accounts, which would be great. Anything else on that? Okay, East Street Bridge update, I think we went through that.
Yeah.
Number 7, EMD, Charlie Kinnicky, MOU for Emergency Resource Recovery Centers, Community Points of Distribution. Everybody should have that in their packet. That's an MOU, a memo of understanding with the Congregational Church next door.
Yep.
Do you want to go over that, Charlie?
Go real quick. We've had an MOU with the church for years relative to plowing out the parking lot and using the hill for sliding and that. But one of the things that MEMA wants is to have a place where we can do staging in case we need to distribute material to the residents of the town, or we need a place for family relocation. There's quite a few issues. We can't use the school because the school operates 180 days out of the year, so there's no way of pulling that in. The library's too small. If we come in here, then we don't have the government running. So we discussed this with the church. The church is in favor of helping us out. I don't believe the church has a generator and stuff like that, but at least we have a starting point here. So what this is about is basically asking your board to endorse this MOU. There's no money transaction between the town and the church.
Right.
And that's it in a quick summary.
Yeah, I read it, and it's pretty straightforward. Just, we'll do the plowing and sanding, and you'll let us use the church facilities inside and outside for emergencies that are described in it.
Can I approach the bench?
Absolutely.
Now, is this 1 year or 3?
Forever.
Yeah, it's just
Just an understanding.
yeah, until we rescind it or they rescind it.
Yeah.
Do you think,
There's the original MOU in that
Yeah, I saw
folder
that.
too.
Okay.
do you think it has to say anything about liability at all? Just thinking about, like, people getting hurt in the hill and people parking or anything happening?
I can't answer people getting hurt on the hill. That was something that I remember on board, we covered that years ago. I can't answer those questions. My suspicion is town insurance would cover us
Okay.
because it's a town activity. Ed would be far more versed than I would be on that.
And this MOU is not for the use of the hill. This is just for the emergency for the church.
Right, well, the hill is owned by the town.
Right.
Right, I know, but we're not addressing that in this MOU.
No.
Yeah. Okay, so has everybody had a chance to read this?
Yep.
Okay, is there any questions on it before we take a motion to approve? Okay, can we have a motion to approve? You're approving that I sign this as the chair,
So move.
I'll second.
okay? And also, just to amend that motion, that Ed signs it as town administrator?
Okay.
Okay,
Also move that.
okay, second that. Okay, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, unanimous. Let me just sign this and pass it down, and
And I'll just call your attention, in the left side of your packet is some updates that Mr. Konecki drew together from some of the department heads on the recent windstorm and the damage.
Yep.
We were
Busy.
Matt, I couldn't believe this. Every 2 to 3 minutes, we got a call for a tree down and a road closed.
Believe it.
This went on for 4 hours. And then when I called MEMA headquarters in Framingham saying we're operating our emergency operations center, they said, why? We're all going home.
It was a
The eastern
weird,
part of the state didn't have an issue. We were like getting run over with trees.
I was down for 20 hours without power. But if you take a left out of Clark Street, you go to
Yeah.
Clark Chapman House, from that point on, there was power.
Yeah.
So it was like, it was just down, it was an odd one, but,
Well, it's a good list if you're just curious, you want to see where all the trees came down, where all the power was out. And there were some people who were out of power for a good day.
Yeah.
And some of them got
36, you
36.
win.
I just want to mention, if you don't mind, that Jim Belisle is here. He's signed this agreement as the chair of the Board of Trustees for the church. So, anyway, thanks, Jim.
Oh, thank you.
The next topic is the MOU for the school bus company. We are working on that. But it's not going as fast as the church.
So MOU for the bus company for emergencies?
For emergencies, if we have to evacuate the school,
Right.
what's the contract the town has? If we have to evacuate the town, can we use the buses to evacuate people, sections of the town, so on and so forth? We need to have some type of an agreement that's written down that we can move forward on.
So you're working with the current bus company?
Yeah.
Now, is that contract coming up this year?
I don't know, but Ed said he was gonna talk to the school department about getting the contract, so the two of us can sit down and go over it.
I guess my question is, if it's going out to bid this year, would it make sense to put that in the bid
I
as
would
an
think
option?
so. I would think so,
Yeah,
especially this day and age. I
Now-
would not want to have an issue tomorrow
right,
and then call the bus company and they say, we don't have any agreement with you.
right, I agree. Now, where are the buses currently housed?
Easthampton,
So they're close, okay. So you'll get back to us on that when it's done?
eventually. Well, there's a number of,
Gotcha.
and we're trying to build the EOC over there. In fact, if you get a chance, you want to see, we actually now have a room dedicated in the police station so that we could meet, which was priceless when we had the windstorm, to just coordinate everything. Between your police chief, your fire chief, and your town highway department. I mean, those three individuals worked their tails off trying to coordinate things and move staff and everything else. But it was so nice to actually have a room that you could do this with grease boards and everything else and plot out what you were doing.
Now, where is that room located? The
It's on the
upper
first
level?
floor.
So the
Upper
back
level, yeah.
level?
Yep. Now, just to know, 6 months ago, it was a closet behind dispatch. There was no physical way anybody could even stand in there.
So what happens? The walls were taken down?
No,
Moved it into another room.
we moved into basically a small conference room there. We got a grant from MEMA to buy some tables and chairs and stuff like that. So we fixed it up so that we'd have a place to work.
Right?
Yeah, I stopped in there during that storm,
Yeah.
tail end of it, and it was impressive. They had all the chiefs there and grease board with all the roads closures. So if a call came in, they could direct people. It was a mess that night, obviously. But
Yeah.
it was good organized
8 pizzas
Plan.
later.
8 pizzas.
What an
Pizza was
excuse,
gone when I got there.
what an excuse for pizza. I think last meeting, we said thanks, everybody, including yourself, but if you didn't hear it, thank you again.
Yeah,
We
it was
appreciate
great.
it.
Thank you.
Very good.
Yeah.
Ed, you need me to sign that?
I'm assuming you want to keep a copy though, Ed, right? Okay. Okay, I asked Ed to put on the review of the police chief job description. He sent us several of them from surrounding towns, so I think between now, I don't know about the next meeting, but 2 meetings from now, maybe we come back with some ideas and thoughts on what we want to see in the new police chief job description, if anything different, so that we can post it and hire permanently?
So why doesn't the PQB review the job descriptions first? Isn't that what they do?
I'm thinking that we decide what we want in the position, then we send it to them for grading.
Right.
Because they can't determine what we want as a board in a police chief.
The duties, but
Right.
It looks pretty thorough. I don't know if this is right or not, but in some cases, I know it's a minor thing, but usually speaking English language and understanding, reading and writing English
Yep.
is not in there. That's in some other departments, I know
Well,
that.
that's why I think we need
But,
2 weeks to take a look at it and come back with some thoughts. And again, I don't think the goal, at least mine is to change this dramatically. We just want to make sure it's right, so when we hire a new chief, he or she is, clear.
Okay.
Okay, does that sound good?
Yeah,
Okay.
sure.
Review of town policy allowing for 75% disability for 26 weeks. Again, we've talked about it, so I asked Ed to put it on the agenda. We need to, Jim brought in information a while back, we really need to re-look at this and determine which way we want to go, because I think we all agree in general, this is probably not the best policy for the town.
Yeah, what I did last time is I got the demographics from the town, and I went and got a policy, but the only negative to that is the records for the payment side, we have nothing to compare it to. So you don't know what you're gonna save. If the policy costs $10,000 or $11,000, we don't have the other side say, well, how much are we gonna save that the town paid out? It's not totaled that way.
Right.
Makes it just very difficult.
I think anecdotally, though, we know that there was a couple of people out, and we can kind of come up with numbers that way.
Don't the timesheets reflect that? I
Yeah.
mean, they should, just because people are out, but if they're getting some form of payment, there should be something on the timesheet
Should show
to
sick time or
indicate their
disability.
status.
Right.
I would think there'd be some documentation,
If it's not, it should be. This way,
yeah.
it gives us something, even if it's a first quarter or even half a year, we can at least interpolate that and
Yeah.
figure out what the savings would be.
So Ed, we're talking about the disability policy for 26 weeks. Do you know if on the time slips it shows when somebody's out on that they're out because of this disability?
I would have another way of identifying that.
You would, okay. So we're talking about what to do. My thought is put a couple people from the board together and do a ad hoc committee and maybe talk to some firms that provide this. And Jim had some starting point to it. Does anybody have any particular expertise in this? And while I would think about it, maybe bring somebody from the town who has experience with human resources and stuff. We've got a lot of good experience out there.
It's sort of like disability, she's suggesting disability management.
You did have to.
Yeah.
My name is Cindy Palmer, 71 Glendale Road. I worked in that field for quite a long time. There are some firms in Springfield that could probably be approached to assist. If that's what you're talking about, you want someone to kind of look at all the factors
Look
and
at the
look
facts
at
and
the
find out.
options. And
Yeah.
I can give some information to Ed and see what
Is
he's.
that something you have a
I
little
personally don't want
time?
anything to do with it, no. It should be absolutely an objective evaluation. I'm retired, but I can give him some information about people that might be able to
Okay.
assist with that.
That'd be great.
Last time, it was probably a couple of years ago, I used Borowski, and it was Sun Life that happened to put
Yeah.
in a proposal, just a rough order of magnitude of what it would cost the town. And I can just confirm this with you, Cindy. I was trying to explain to everybody that if you buy a policy and you pay for if you pay for the policy with after-tax dollars, the benefit is tax-free.
Yeah.
I believe that, so that was a big factor, that you could buy a policy that's 70% of their pay, and if they pay for it with after-tax dollars, which is very minimal, the benefit is tax-free, so it's like getting almost 100% of your pay.
Yeah.
It's huge. It was a good policy.
Those are the
So-
options. Yeah,
So
those
what
are the
you're saying
options
then
we need
is
to look at.
ultimately, people could be whole?
Yes.
Could be what?
But
I
they
mean,
have, right, you have to pay for their part of the premium. They pay that part of the premium with after-tax dollars, and then the benefit, I think the only thing that comes out of it is FICA, I believe, and then the other taxes, it's tax-free.
Because I know that the last time this came up, at least I remember hearing that, the town employees were concerned about the impact on them. And if this is a benefit, if that could be shared with them, it might help them maybe be a little more supportive of moving in this direction.
And the other good part to this is you have a management company, you have a firm that's gonna manage the claims and who's eligible not and everything. It just gets the town out of that picture, which I thought was a great thing as well.
It's very important.
So do we have two people that want to serve on an ad hoc committee? And again, we can add, obviously, Ed and somebody from the community that has experience.
I'd like to nominate Jim.
Okay. I think that's payback, Joe.
I do too.
Do we have a second to
Well, I
that?
would be glad to do this
Okay.
until May,
Okay.
so.
So we have a second for Jim?
I'll second it.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Now, do we have one other person that might be interested?
I nominate Francine.
I think we,
The left wing, come on.
I don't know anything about this.
Rini, you have any interest?
Rini,
I don't
you know anything
think that I
about
would be
this? I
able
don't
to
know anything
add
about
much
this.
to the discussion,
Okay.
frankly.
So
She-
Francine, would you be
Francine has a lot
interested?
more financial
my
background.
list is getting
I
very
mean, we
long.
don't know, I mean,
Um,
isn't this
all
in
right,
the,
I
isn't
mean,
it,
I
this in
have-
the neighborhood
all
of
right,
like
I
Mass
have a
Mutual?
background
This
in
is what they do,
disabilities.
Right,
right? I
but
mean, we
this-
don't have anybody
This
in
group
town.
is going to get
Francine's
people
acknowledging this is her background.
involved.
I
All
think
right.
this would be a great team.
Okay,
So,
so I got 2 new assignments tonight, almoners.
so
and-
you second,
and-
Francine?
Yeah, I second
All in
that,
favor?
yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, sorry, just
Aye.
get on the record. So Francine and Jim, thank you for volunteering each other. So if you could, if there's anybody out there who has experience in this field that's interested in serving on an ad hoc committee, shouldn't take too long. I say that to entice you on the committee. Let Ed know, and then we can put a little committee together. You can do some research into it and report back. Sound good?
Sounds good.
Okay. Next is notice of intent to convert land classified as 61A, which is number 2 and 4 Woodmar Lane. They want to build houses on it. Just before the meeting, I received a memo from the Board of Assessors regarding this land. It says, "We, the board, recommend not pursuing the right of first refusal, but we request the select board consult the opinion of other boards with consideration of stormwater runoff design in the original subdivision plan before making final decision." So, they don't have an issue with it, but they have an issue with the water runoff. Jim, from the planning board point of view, is there anything?
Well, I guess my only question would be, I don't know if Amanda could answer this. When the planning board initially approved the subdivision for Woodmar, there was 6 building lots, and now they're adding 2 to it. I would just want to make sure, there's a homeowner's agreement for the 6 houses. I would just want to make sure that the 2 additional lots, if their driveway's on Woodmar, they become members of that homeowners association. I don't know if you can address that.
Hi, Amanda Jonas Kemp. I have an office at 1 Campus Lane in Easthampton. So the proposed owners, the people we are under contract with, we have advised them that we believe they should have to join the association, because if their frontage, if what their entrance, their driveways are on Woodmar, they would be utilizing the stormwater system. So we are currently discussing that with the people who we are under contract with.
Perfect. Just to make it clear to everybody else, it's the homeowners association on that street that is responsible for the maintaining and upkeeping of the stormwater system, includes the detention basin and the catch basins and so on, and cleaning them and things.
So if the HOA, if they join the HOA, the stormwater runoff issue will be taken care of by the HOA?
Right. I just want to make sure they're part of that. Otherwise, if they're not, then there may be down the
Yeah.
road some problems between the other 6 houses, and if these 2 aren't on it, paying their fair share. That's all.
Because they're going to contribute to the usage of the stormwater system, we feel that they should have to contribute to the association, so.
So with that in mind, do we want to wait until we find out if they're going to join the HOA formally? Yes, sir?
I think they're 2 separate issues.
And actually, this is just on here so that you know we've received it.
Okay.
Until you got the notice from the assessors tonight, we haven't heard back from the other boards. But
Okay.
my suggestion would be to...
It did go to Conservation last
Last
night,
night,
and
right.
Conservation did vote to recommend that you not exercise your right. The planning board, it is on their agenda for tomorrow night, and I plan on attending that meeting.
So why don't we just put this off till next
For
meeting?
the 20th, yeah.
Technically,
That's fine. I came only because I saw it was on the agenda. I hadn't asked yet to be on the agenda for it because I knew all the boards hadn't met.
Okay, sounds
Technically,
good.
the homeowners association issue here should have been addressed at the planning board issue when the A&R,
A&R
when
plan
the,
was signed.
when the A&R lots were signed, they should have addressed that, but I had to abstain because I'm in a butter. But I just wanted to bring it to somebody's attention that that should be addressed prior to selling them, I think.
All
Thanks,
right.
Amanda.
Thank you.
Okay, Green Communities, DOR, Norris Lighting, we've talked about that. Any other necessary business that can't await the March 19th regular board meeting?
Are you in communication with Joan and the Council of Aging, Ed, relative to the Boston Cane thing?
Yes,
Okay.
actually both Joan and Lucy, we may be putting it on the agenda for the 20th.
Thank you.
Or the 19th, I should say.
I was going to say which meeting, yeah, 19th,
Yeah.
right?
For some reason, I keep thinking it's the 20th, and I don't know why.
Okay. No PCFs, no licenses, permits. Francine, you signed one warrant?
Actually, you signed this
you
one.
signed.
Do we need to sign
Oh, this is
anything
one I
on
signed?
You signed.
thing on 11 on the green communities? Do we need
No,
to sign
Ed gave
anything?
us, oh,
No, not at this point. I'm still expecting some further information on
Okay.
that,
Yeah,
which
he-
I was going,
I just-
expected to have tonight, but we don't. So that'll be back on for the 20th.
All right.
yeah, he reported on that.
No, I'm just seeing a bunch of yellow and red X's here, but
Oh, okay.
it's fine.
Yeah, that's correct. I did sign the warrant, W-19-35 for $847,603.37 in Francine's absence. Nothing is required from that. Other documents requiring signature, none. Pending items, is there anything on there anybody wants to talk about that we haven't, or just leave them there for now?
I
We
hit 'em
covered
all in
most
my
of them, yeah.
Administrator's report.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
talked about all of them. actually.
Minutes to approve, February 20th, 19, joint meeting for Hampshire Municipal Advisory Committee meeting that we had up in Westhampton. Did everybody get a chance to review those?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Okay, here a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I'm going to abstain. I wasn't there, and I didn't
Hey,
review.
missed a spirited meeting, it was good. By the way, I asked Ed to set up a, did I say quarterly or twice a year, Ed, meeting with the other 4 towns' select boards? So we'll
Quarterly.
quarterly, so have it put on an agenda so that we all meet. We'll probably have to rotate around to different towns, but I think we all pretty much said it was a great idea, so let's put it in place. Okay, open time for the public. Just because we had a little bit of a contentious meeting a couple of meetings ago, we're going to keep it to 5 minutes each. Courtesy for all, please. If you can introduce yourself.
Sure. Good evening, Keith Locke, 106 Crooked Ledge Road. Thank you for the time tonight. Mr. Chair, I had previously sent a letter via email to the board. Not sure if everybody had an opportunity to read that.
Is that the one where you asked to be put on the agenda?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and so I understand the reason for not being placed on the agenda. That's fine. My letter was 2-part. The second part asked for any non-exempt meeting minutes,
Yeah.
and I have a response to that, so I'm fine with that. But what I'd like to do tonight is, in the interest of time, read portions of my letter that I think are important. And again, this is regarding 71 Gilbert Road. I want to read portions of my letter, provide perhaps a firsthand experience as to what has gone on at 71 Gilbert Road. And then, if time allows, ask a few questions, just try to bring a little light to what is occurring there. So to start with, for those of you who don't know me, I'm a 10-year resident of Southampton, live on 106 Crooked Ledge Road. I've been a planning board member for 7 years, and I'm currently in my second term, about halfway through my second term. And to clarify, this correspondence is not meant to express the position or opinion of the planning board. I reference my experience as a planning board member to indicate to you all that I have experience with the town's bylaws and the Massachusetts open meeting laws. To make my position even clearer, I have personally visited 71 Gilbert Road on several occasions to engage in numerous activities, included but not limited to exercise, birthday parties, holiday parties, backyard barbecues, and other types of events that would normally be expected at a private residence. Matt and Jessica DeSalt are very close friends of mine and my family. We certainly entertain together, we vacation together, we watch each other's children, and in general enjoy life as we do with other friends that reside in Southampton. After witnessing the broadcast of the February 19th meeting, I felt compelled to generate this correspondence. Based on my understanding of the town's position to date, the town has determined that a violation has occurred and that a cease and desist letter was issued to the DeSalts for the alleged use of a commercial gym business. As many of you are aware, our town's zoning bylaws are somewhat antiquated, and I couldn't necessarily find a definition of commercial or even commercial use. Surprisingly, Massachusetts general laws didn't have a definition of commercial use either. But nonetheless, I found one that I think makes sense, and I'll read it. It's a commercial use is one which is undertaken for a business purpose rather than hobby, recreational, educational, or other purposes. Such uses are usually attributed to nonprofit entities rather than an individual, university, or other educational institution. The common thread that I found in definitions of commercial was the terminology for profit. And I'm here tonight to put my integrity on the line as a planning board member, my professionalism, here to tell you guys that as of January and February of this year, I can absolutely attest that the DeSalts are currently not profiting, nor they do intend to profit from any exercise operations or any activities that occur on their residence. It is my understanding that in response to the town's cease and desist letter, which was dated mid-October of 2018, the DeSalts made immediate changes to actions that could have been perceived as commercial in nature, in my opinion, thereby complying with the order. However, to date, the order appears to still be in full effect. It is my strong opinion that the DeSalts' use of their property for exercise has been conveniently labeled and continues to be labeled as commercial in order to appease the complaining party without any fair consideration of due process to the DeSalts. The failure to provide this due process in this matter is certainly concerning, while it appears to potentially set a biased precedent. The town's current zoning bylaws, which I'm very familiar with, does not define nor contain a use titled organized group exercise, a term that was coined by town council to further define the alleged use at 71 Gilbert Road. Under the regulations, any use not listed shall be construed to be prohibited. The obvious permitted use in this zone is that of a one-family detached dwelling, a use that intrinsically allows for friends to gather regularly for a variety of activities. As I stated before, I have regularly gathered at the DeSalts residence with other friends to exercise and perform other normal activities. From my review, the town's general and zoning bylaws do not contain any regulations limiting the amount of friends, visitors, relatives, or the like that citizens are allowed to have gather at their private residences. Additionally, absent from the bylaws are any restrictions on the frequency of such gatherings. Obviously, these gatherings are subject to state and or local noise regulations, air quality regulations, and general criminal laws. As was stated during the public portion of the meeting on February 19th, an objective and quantitative noise test was conducted during a normal exercise gathering, the results of which proved conclusively that any noise generated, which was minimal, I think the terminology was less than a typewriter or equivalent to a typewriter, any noise that was generated was well below prescribed standards. To my knowledge, the activities that occur during an exercise routine do not contribute or degrade to air quality regulations. The exercise activity is conducted inside a private accessory building, a building that is of good construction quality and fits the rural character of the neighborhood. My question to the town is this: are there any bylaws in existence that would otherwise preclude frequent gatherings at private residences for non-commercial functions? With the exception of the conveniently non-existent organized group exercise label that has been assigned to this alleged use, I cannot reasonably determine how or why the DeSalts' use of their private property in this matter constitutes a zoning violation. For the town to continue on this approach may set a troubling precedent that allows any offended neighbor to report a perceived violation of the bylaws in anticipation that the town will act as their private agent to facilitate a means to the end. I have some examples in here. I'll read one. You may
Can I
find
just say that we're already past 6 minutes here?
5 minutes.
Yeah, are we? Yeah, we're over 5 minutes now. I don't think we're going to have a reply, except the bylaws and everything. Have you sat down with the building commissioner? He has all the details. We've gone over in details, and we're, supporting him going forward. And there's a lot of information that will answer a lot of those questions. And we've brought it up at several meetings. So we're not going to continue to answer the same questions, but I'd say sit down with him and have him list it. And, to say that, they're not profiting in January and February, respect your opinion, but it's an opinion that, needs to go through the process with the building commissioner.
Okay. So am I cut off at this point, Mr. Chair?
Basically, yes,
Okay.
because we've gone over this a lot before, and, there's just two sides to this, and we don't want to keep bringing the sides back and forth. Building commissioner is going through the process. He's
Yep.
informed the people that they can go to the ZBA or we'll continue with the process.
Okay. Could I be allowed to see if any other residents have any other open questions?
If any other
I
residents
don't want
wants
to
to come
detract
up.
from the meeting or take up any additional time, but I do think there hasn't been the opportunity to hear an objective opinion on this matter.
Well, actually, a couple of meetings, we've heard a lot of opinions on both sides, and they differed quite vastly. But it's open time for the public if somebody
Okay.
else wants to come up and do their 5 minutes.
Well, like I said, I'm here, if you guys have any questions, Rini, I mean, we've sat on the same side of topics and debates before. Some of you know me, I'm here to answer any questions you may have,
Yeah.
but I'll let if there's any other members of the public.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else that wants to have open time for the public on any topic? April West, come on up.
April West, 54 Strong Road. Just to remind the board, and thank you all for spending a lot of time, I know you guys are very busy, about the letter that a group of concerned citizens sent last June, on June 1st, regarding the Wayne parcels located on Fulmer Road and College Highway. Those land parcels were under Chapter 61 and both sold to private buyers without giving the town the proper notice and the right of first refusal. It's been a year since those parcels transferred ownership, and with the exception of a letter from the select board saying that you were waiting on the opinion from the Attorney General, we haven't heard anything further. So my question is the board planning on giving the group an answer regarding the breach of public trust that the June 1st letter referred to? And is the board planning on pursuing the right of first refusal on either or both of those parcels?
If I'm remembering right, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that was a letter that the group sent to the Attorney General's office?
It was sent to the select board
And
with a
the
CC
copy-
to the
right.
AG. Yes.
And from our point of view, our attorney said that we went through the process, we didn't have the right of first refusal because it stayed in 61, I believe, and the affidavit was filed, and nothing has been done to contradict that. It is coming up to a year, I think, in March.
It's over a year now.
Is it a year
We're
now?
in March.
Okay, yeah. And the AG has not felt, I'm assuming, give an opinion on that because they haven't replied. And is that correct, Ed? We haven't gotten anything?
No, we have not heard from the Attorney General's office.
Right. So as far as I'm concerned, that was settled a while ago, and unless the AG came up with something different.
Okay. I mean, we got a letter saying you were waiting on the response
Right.
from the AG, and we haven't heard anything further, so.
They haven't contacted us
asking.
either.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
There was an issue that came up at the open space meeting by a resident that came to address the issue on Fulmer Road. And I do believe one of the actions was to put it on the agenda for a select board meeting. If you want to just double check on that.
To discuss it,
Yeah.
I know who you're talking about.
Okay.
Okay, let's do that
It
afterward.
wasn't within 48 hours of this meeting, so I think if you want to just look back.
Yeah, no, I remember who, I'm trying to remember his last name, but,
Searle.
Cyril, okay. Okay, we can get that on the next one. Anybody else? Nope.
Could I be allowed, I understand the essence of time, I'll be very tactful, just have a couple questions.
Does anybody want, as far as I'm concerned, I think we got our 5 minutes in. Does anybody else want to hear anything else on the topic?
I support what the building inspector is done, and I think the next course of action has to do with ZBA.
So we're saying no.
Well, I guess my questions wouldn't be necessarily relative to 71 Gilbert Road.
If it's anything on bylaws or anything like that, we're not going to have that information. It's the building commissioner or the planning board, depending on what bylaws you're talking about.
Could I ask one question?
Absolutely, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is the town aware of if the Council on Aging was required to get any sort of special permit to conduct the organized group exercise that occurs in Town Hall?
I have no idea. You're on the COA?
Yeah, I'll ask him tomorrow. I'm on the COA liaison, so.
Okay.
Okay,
All right.
we'll
fair enough.
find out.
Thank you.
Okay. Get one last shot? No?
You don't want to say anything, Tammy, about last night? We gave you, we thanked you in
Yeah. Yeah, we
absentia for
We
your
talked
work
a little
last
bit
night.
about it. Do you want to go over anything from Hampshire Regional? It's up to you.
Tammy Walunas, 298 College Highway. Apologize for not being here earlier to address your comments. Yes, last night, school committee met, and we had a very long, detailed meeting talking about the budget and our concerns with all the towns, understanding that as an elected representative for our town, that we really needed to take that into consideration, besides being a school committee member and knowing what we really need for our students and our teachers and supporting them. And we went with the level funded budget, which was a big cut.
Well,
So we will be working with all of that.
Well, we also brought up, although it's level funded, it's still going to cost the town about $129,000 more because of reduced revenues. But
Yes.
at least it was a good faith effort. And we talked about yourself, Margaret, and the others being there to really discuss it and bring it up. And I think you folks moved the conversation in that direction. So thanks again.
Yeah, it was hard because there were some towns that were ready to vote right with the regular budget, regardless of what the other 4 towns felt like.
Yep.
Not even considering the hardships that they were going through and how their elementary schools were being hit, besides fire and highway and police.
I would say, in my opinion anyways, and Francine was there too, is I think as you kept discussing it, you swayed the people and they saw, okay, you're right, we want to do what we have to do for Hampshire, but the other towns have a concern.
Yeah.
And because of the HMAC meeting a couple weeks ago, I think that was a big upsurge right there, so.
Yeah.
I think we're going in the right direction.
And that's the thing, we were, Kristen, Principal Smitty was saying that, this could possibly 2 cuts of 2 teachers, which means 10 classes, which is a lot when you have kids coming in for these advanced classes. So it'll be interesting to see where we can move money around. We've got a job ahead of us.
I guess my whole observation was the fact that for the preliminary budget that they presented last month, and then for the one that they presented last night, that it's not distributed to the committee members in advance so that you could look at it and understand it and study it and make comments, rather than it's kind of, I felt like here, vote.
Yeah.
Wait, so was it really just handed out at the meeting? That was the first time they had a chance to see it? I've been expressing this concern for a while, that
Well-
you get a chance to
Of
look
the-
at a budget, like,
Right.
No.
literally the minute.
Last month, they
At
handed
that-
out the first
That doesn't give
numbers.
the committee members any opportunity for input or questions to to
Or to
really
critically
think
think
through what
about
the
it
issues
either.
are.
And that was the thing, we didn't have a sub-finance committee this year, because we had told Kristen, or Principal Smitty, that, this was what, we couldn't go over and above, just give us the basics. And so that is what was presented. Normally, we would have had, like with our contract negotiations, we normally would have a group of us that would be meeting and looking at different things. That did not happen this year. Yeah. And I was on that the past 3 years. So this was the 4th year that doing this, that they actually didn't have that happen.
But what Superintendent Osborne said, that next year you can convene earlier
Yes.
and take the budget that we have now, put a factor onto it, and at least use that as a basis, which will give you a lot better.
Yeah.
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 So that commitment, I think, will help.
I think also we will know what the teacher's contract is.
Right.
So that will help with the planning of the numbers and everything. We will know where that stands instead of
Yeah,
not, it's up in the air.
I agree. But thank you again. We appreciate it.
Okay.
Last call. Okay, if nothing else, we're going to go into executive session, and we won't be coming out. So
Ever.
Ever.
we have 7 items. That may be the truth. So I'm going to do the reading of why we're going into executive session, just to put it on the record. First is Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 21A3, discuss strategy with respect to litigation, which is for 71 Gilbert Road zoning enforcement. Executive Session 2, General Law, Chapter 38, Section 21A3, discuss strategy with respect to litigation. It's Regina Shea Sullivan versus Town of Southampton Select Board, District Court Number 16 CV 12023. Third is Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 21A, Number 6, consider purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real estate, 68 Pomeroy Meadow Road. Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 21A, Number 3, discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation, Local 98 International Union of Operating Engineers, which is the Highway Department. Session 5, Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 21A, Number 3, discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation, Police Officers, New England Benevolent Police Association. Session 6, Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 21A, Number 3, discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation, is Dispatchers, New England Benevolent Police Association. In Session 7, Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 21A, Number 7, to comply with or act under the authority of any general or special law or federal grant and aid. Approval of executive session minutes, November 27th, 2018. How's that, how to clear a room, huh? Yeah. I look up and nobody's here. So roll call vote, need a motion, first of all, go into
I'll make a
executive.
motion to go into executive session.
Second,
Second,
a roll call vote,
Road and I.
Roland, aye.
Martin, aye.
Fishman, aye.
Labrie, aye.
Okay, 5-minute break. Let Ryan get that hat on and out the door. Thanks, Ryan.